Joe Bourdow is a partner with Premier Franchise Advisors and has a 45-year business career that includes significant experience as a successful franchisee and franchisor. Joe served 2 terms on the IFA's board of directors, was chair of the IFA Diversity Institute, a member of the IFA Education Foundation Executive Committee, and was vice chair of the Franchise Relations Task Force. First of all, Joe, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be back with you.
Yep, lovely, beautiful day here, and it looks like a pretty nice day in St. Pete also.
Yep. Still summer here, so it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit today.
Wow,
so.
That's just wonderful. I can hear the barbecue in the background sizzling away. Look, we're now roughly 6 months into the global COVID crisis. Do you know more about how franchised businesses have been affected by this terrible disease?
Well, they have been impacted, no doubt about it. Our timing is good on this because the International Franchise Association and FranData, who is really an authority in this space, published some research results on a webinar last week. That information is available online, but I pulled out a few high points for you because I knew you were going to be asking this question. To set the picture for you, here in the United States, as we headed into 2020, at the beginning of the year, there were 773,600 franchised businesses across the United States. Now, within the first 6 months of COVID, during a time where there was a significant support program from the federal government called PPP, during this time, 32,700 franchise businesses closed. And at this point, 10,875 say they have closed permanently. This has affected 3/4 of all franchise businesses. There's about 25% of them who have not really been impacted due to the nature of the business, that they're in. But 3/4 have been impacted, and only about 25% of those have returned to their normal year-over-year monthly revenue numbers. So this has been a significant impact. Revenues are down totally across franchising, $185.3 billion as a result of this. One of the concerning things, an additional concerning thing, and we'll get to some good news later, the Small Business Pulse Survey conducted by the U.S. Census predicts that 1 in 20 small businesses, not just franchises, but all small businesses, 1 in 20 will permanently close as a result of this when all is said and done. And if that's true, that would be another 36,000 franchise businesses closing to go along with the 10,875 that have already closed permanently. So that's looks like where the number is going to shake out. We obviously know this is not a happy picture. At this point, Congress in the United States has not been able to get together with the president on another much needed financial support program. That's kind of temporarily dead in the water, at least as of this evening. But who knows? But we still have, rough times to go. We still have impact of COVID hotspots. Now states in the Midwest are seeing some big increases. So just like many other places around the world, we're still very much in this challenging time.
What's the mood out there at the moment? It must be really tough to stay positive.
Yeah, and I think that generally speaking, franchisors and franchisees are kind of a tough lot, and they tend to be optimistic and to try to stay positive. Some good things have happened as we discussed on some previous calls. As franchisors and franchisees have needed to become creative, they've come up with virtual programs and processes, sometimes new products. There's some really cool things, that have happened. that while they've been not enough to bring things back to normal, they still, I think, bode well for the future when we do come back to normal, because companies may be running more efficiently. They may have created some new products or new ideas that they went ahead and rolled out during this time. And so that's the positive side. And again, most franchisors and franchisees do not have the option of failing, and so they have to do the best they can to survive and thrive during this period.
What about franchise development? Are people still looking at buying into franchised businesses, even with COVID still raging, and it's just it just won't lay down and die, COVID? It's just getting stronger in parts of the world.
Exactly. Interestingly enough, yes. I mean, franchise development is still underway. Most companies are very active, at this point. Interestingly enough, when we looked at the numbers in the first quarter of this year, there were some companies seeing a reduction in leads for prospective franchisees. The brokers were reporting some of that, and the conventional wisdom was that employment was so high in the United States that many people had options of other jobs, and they were less likely to reach out on their own. Obviously, that evaporated pretty quickly as we moved into March and April. And now we're seeing that people who are either still employed or have recently become unemployed are now realizing that maybe they are at a time in their life when it makes sense for them to look at a franchised business as a way to have a little bit more security going forward. They also have, the time to do it now. So companies that are well run in this space are their development departments are very active at this point.
I've heard it said that franchises, and you've mentioned it before, should be awarded, not sold. But do you agree on this, especially in this day and age of COVID?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in any time, and especially now, franchisors really need to take the time to assure themselves that a new franchisee they're bringing in is really going to be a good fit, for their brand. So there needs to be a balance, between the kind of the franchise sales aspect of it all and the franchise approval process. And there really should be a process within a franchisor to balance this out. There needs to be somebody not only selling, but also perhaps themselves or somebody else asking the tough questions of the prospective franchisees. I mean, this needs to be viewed as a marriage. It's a long-term relationship. Many franchisors have a 10-year initial term on a franchise agreement. So these are very difficult to unwind and unpleasant to unwind if either the franchisee makes a bad choice or the franchisor makes a bad choice in awarding the franchise.
How can you tell, though, who's maybe a good fit? Don't all say good entrepreneurs make good or great franchisees?
Yeah, you'd think they would. But actually, that's not the case. There's at least a couple of different kinds of entrepreneurs. There are the what I call the flaming entrepreneurs, who are serial entrepreneurs, who are really in it for themselves, by themselves, and really want to do it, their own way. And so sometimes when I was in the approval process with my franchise company, I would run into these people, and you really needed to, they were ready, willing, and able to write the check and sign up today, believe me, because they knew they could do it. They were confident in all of that. But you begin to pick up on the fact that they may become a problem later because they're not a good fit. They're too much of an entrepreneur for a franchise relationship. There's questions that prospective franchisees should always ask themselves if they are first-time franchisees and going to experience the relationship for the first time. Big question: will you be happy being in business for yourself but not by yourself? Will you be happy and satisfied simply executing somebody else's operating system that you did not design yourself? with some brands, that means executing the operating system very precisely. Will you be happy not being in total control, where the franchisor might make a decision that's not a contractual kind of thing, but it's a strategic thing you don't agree with? Or you're going to be able to deal with that? Will you be happy signing up, for 10 years or more? And what about being a part of a system with other franchisees? You will be joining a group of people that you may or may not get along with. But one of the values of being in a franchise system is that you have other people doing the same business that you are, and you can learn from one another. But does that appeal to you, that kind of thing, or not? People who are truly independent entrepreneurs who are burning with a flaming desire to be on their own will often have a hard time looking in the mirror and answering those questions honestly.
Then who does make a great franchisee in general? I mean, what makes a franchisee even better?
Yeah, well, it starts with asking those very same questions and coming up perhaps with different answers. I, for one, and most people that get into franchising on the franchisee side think it's a great advantage to be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And they realize there's an advantage to not having to take the risk to invent a product or a service from scratch, where there's an even higher risk, of failure. So they see that as a benefit. And, they also like the fact that they will be doing the same business with tens or dozens or hundreds of other people around the country or around the world who are executing the same operating system. And a lot of shared best practices are going to be a result of that. So folks that really understand the relationship, understand that it is a long-term relationship, make very good franchisees and are often very successful.
So what you're saying then, that it's the job of a good franchisor to try and then identify prospective franchisees who will be a good fit for franchising first before considering your specific brand.
Yeah, and again, it's a balance, because you obviously want and need to bring new franchisees into your system. So there's a strong motivation to do that. But that franchise fee or that commission won't look so good 2 or 3 years down the road if you've got an unhappy franchisee. And if you have a bad fit, most people are surprised about this. You could have a franchisee who owns a unit or multiple units that are very profitable, that have surpassed his financial expectations, and a particular franchisee could still be unhappy and causing trouble for you because they're not a good fit. They never really should have done it in the first place. They cannot be happy in your system.
Assuming that a prospective franchisee is a good fit for franchising in general, what else goes into being a good fit for your specific brand?
Well, I always recommend and always wanted to really understand why the prospective franchisee was interested in being a franchisee in my system. Could they really explain that? Did they have a good reason to do it, or did they just find us online or through a broker or whatever? And if they didn't buy our franchise, they were going to buy something totally different in some other industry. That usually didn't impress me. So I wanted a franchisee, a prospective franchisee, to come in and say, here's why I'm interested in this system. I understand your mission, I understand your vision, I buy into it, want to be a part of it, I'm excited about it, and can explain in some detail why I want to be a franchisee, in your system. So they need to buy into the mission and vision. I've worked with Huntington Learning Centers here in the United States today, and many of their franchisees are very mission driven to really fill in an important gap in education in the United States. And many of those franchisees are very successful because they are so mission driven. When I found Valpak many years ago, I had sold radio advertising in a local market for several years, and I knew that small businesses needed advertising, but they were really interested in attribution. We didn't use that term back in the day, but measuring results was another way to put it. Valpak filled in that gap for me because it was coupons. I could measure the results for my advertisers. When I found Fast Signs, when I became a multi-unit franchisee of Fast Signs, after having dealt with small business people for several years, I knew what a hard time they were having back in those days getting signs made or banners printed. Usually in somebody's garage, it would take 3 weeks and cost too much. And Fast Signs was creating a way for small businesses to get high quality signs and lettering overnight. And so I could understand the need. I bought into the vision, and as a result, bought into the franchise opportunity. Interestingly enough, that franchisor, the founder of that company, was a fellow Valpak franchisee who we had met and were friends with. And when he started Fast Signs, we already knew each other, and he already understood why there was a need. And of course, the rest is history with both of those companies. Fast Signs now with hundreds of locations, around the world.
What about culture? Where does that fit in?
Well, that's an interesting one, and it can be, a little bit squishy. But I usually start with two major differences in franchisor culture. Really have to do with at what stage the franchise is in. How old is it? How long has it been around? Is it a startup? Is it emerging? There needs to be a first and second franchisee of every system. But is it an emerging? Do they have 30, 40, 50 units, still pretty new? Is it the kind of system where a franchisee can pick up the phone and talk to the founder? He's got their cell phone number, call them at home, that kind of thing. Very informal culture where franchisors and franchisees are evolving the system very quickly because it's an emerging stage. Very different culture in a 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old franchise brand that has already grown to scale, that may have a lot of bureaucracy involved, a lot of layers, and that requires a different kind of franchisee who will be happy and want to be a part of a system like that. So that goes into part of the fit. Another one is really how does the organization act? How do the people act? I've had occasion to attend several different conferences or franchisor conventions in the last few years for companies that I'm working with. And I noticed there are completely different ways in which conventions and conferences are conducted. Some of them are like any other button-down corporate meeting, all very formal with presentations, basically work. Then you have others that may feel more like the United Nations, and with a number of different cultures represented within the franchisee group. Certainly true with global franchisors, but to a certain extent with others here in the States as well. And then there's the third kind, which is more like Animal House. And if you remember Animal House, it was, a fraternity. And, that was kind of the way we began. And we actually called our annual conference Coupon U, and it was actually modeled after Animal House. But, there would be people that would come into a culture like that and be completely shocked and say, how could business be going on here? How could this company be successful when all it seems to do, they just want to have fun? So some people love that. So again, I think it really comes down to finding the right fit with a company that you believe in the mission, vision, you're comfortable joining at whatever stage of evolution the brand is in. And then are you going to like the people at the home office, and are you going to like your fellow franchisees? Do you share kind of a culture? Will you have fun? Will you cooperate? Will there be trust and cooperation? And all of that goes into this two-way, very important decision that needs to be made before the dotted line is signed on and the check is written, and that's the franchisor to the greatest extent possible and the franchisee to the greatest extent possible, making sure that there is a good fit and they're going to make a good decision that's going to make both parties happy for many years into the future.
Still an exciting industry, and it will get stronger. And as you mentioned before, people are very, very resilient and strong. If they want to find out more, though, and let me think now, who would they call? Oh, not Ghostbusters, but they would call Joe Bourdow. How would they contact you, Joe?
Yeah, PremierFranchiseAdvisors.com. Fantastic. Way to reach us anytime.
Now, I can actually hear well, not hear, I can imagine that burger you threw on the barbecue. It's sort of resembling the coals that are cooking it at the moment. So maybe take two on the barbecue with a good Chardonnay.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to it. The sun is setting here on the west coast of Florida. So we'll lose our lights shortly. It's probably time to sign off.
It is indeed. Joe Bourdow, thank you very much.